Call this meeting to order, and will you all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks. All right, just want to check with folks, are there any changes to the agenda? No? Okay. All righty then. I guess then we'll start off with public comments. We'll allow 15 minutes if need be, and if people would raise their hand.
Yeah, just raise your hand through the attendees or the bottom of the screen. You have a feature, you push the button. We can then acknowledge you first and last name and town of residence. We have Mark Haley who's raised his hand.
Okay.
You want to give that one more try, Mark?
Sure.
Yeah, that's better.
There we go. That's a lot better.
Okay. So Mark Haley from Keene, and I'm also 8th grade ELA teacher. I did just want to first clarify something that I made as a statement last week that I felt like ended up being misinterpreted through nobody's fault. I just want to say that when I was asking the school board for help with policy enforcement, I was not implying that teachers or building level administration were not fulfilling their duties at all, and I just wanted to make that really clear. Our administration has dealt with all learners who have been referred to them in accordance with the COVID handbook. Really what I was asking for was more strength given to the COVID handbook itself, so that our administrators aren't spending their time having to watch camera footage and that kind of things and meeting with repeat offenders over something with life and death consequences. So I was more hoping that the board would take a harsher or a more firm stand, with the community members who don't seem to believe the safety protocols are important, and let them know that learners who choose to ignore the protocols need to remain in remote learning, so that they're not endangering everybody else. And I know that office referrals today, I'm sure were much lower than where they were before we went remote. But I will also say that they were low at the start of the school year, so I'm hoping that something can be in place prior to them expanding. And then I just want to again ask for the board to consider exploring an actual hybrid model for education where half the population is in person 2 days a week and the other half is in person another 2 with the Wednesday for cleaning, as other area schools are doing. It continues to be disingenuous to state that our model is a hybrid model when we have nearly the entire population of students in the building 4 days out of the week. And all the official recommendation for learning cohorts in true hybrid models, we're not doing either at the middle high school, and we're only cohorting at the element. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate you letting me clarify my statement from last week.
Thanks, Mark.
All right, now we have Charlotte Elwell.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome, thank you. So my name is Charlotte Elwell. I live in Keene and I teach 8th grade science at JRMS. And first off, I want to echo a statement that many colleagues last week shared, that no one believes that remote learning is an ideal learning or teaching situation. I can tell you that after just one day back in the classroom today, I have a new energy that I haven't felt in months, and I'm already coming up with more ideas of how to teach in this COVID world, and that was really exciting to feel. That said, I wanted to clarify some points that were made at the previous school board meeting regarding the study that was cited in the presentation. It was a study that looked at schools in both Washington State and Michigan and concluded that in-person schooling contributed very little to community spread. And it was not the first time that I had heard this particular study referenced, so I was interested to check it out for myself. And I know that it was shared in the presentation that the data in this study was collected during times with low to moderate community spread, but upon reading it for myself, I found that I think the numbers actually become a really important discussion. So on page 23 of this particular study, in the second paragraph of their discussion and conclusion, the authors state the important exception they found in their model where community spread is already high. When examining their Michigan data, they found that the schools did begin to contribute when existing community spread is already over 21 cases per 100,000, and that's a measure of average daily case count. And then in Washington state, they found the threshold to be actually as low as 5 cases per 100,000, to where schools, in-person schooling starts to affect spread. And as of this morning, the New York Times is reporting that Cheshire County has an average daily case count of 60 per 100,000. So obviously that is quite higher than both of those numbers. And I am aware of the fairly recent outbreak here in Keene at a senior living facility. And this could certainly be contributing to the high number. But I've also been noticing that both Jaffrey and Ringe have had higher average 7-day positivity rates than Cheshire County as a whole. And that was also cited in the presentation to the board on January 14th. So I do believe that our communities are contributing to that high number as well. And I would also like to point out that in the same paragraph in their conclusion on page 23 of that studies, the authors state, quote, "We caution that we are basing these estimates on periods of time when COVID cases were low relative to late autumn of 2020. Hence, any application of our results to the context of periods with high case levels, such as in December of 2020, would be making out of sample predictions." And that's the end of the quotes. So while I completely understand that there were numerous factors to consider when making the decision to send us back to in-person, I guess I'm just curious as to why this study was referenced several times when you look at what the authors concluded, it clearly does not apply to our current situation. So thank you for letting me share that.
Thanks, Charlotte.
All right, and that's all we have for him at this point.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Tim. Okay. Up next, Superintendent's Report.
All right, so today went around to all the schools, Ringe Memorial School, then to Jaffrey Grade School, then here, walked the hallways, went into the classrooms, and just to see things, how things were. Kids were excited to be back. The general process of everything seemed to be going well. Administrators, though, indicating that, once again, we're in that strained state within staff, that things had gone fairly well. A few blips in the morning here with just, the new kind of approach to getting students in and everything, but they'll fine tune that as the week goes on. And tonight, I think that some people, it might even be going on right now, might be thinking about the streaming of the basketball game. So we have the boys basketball game that's here. So when you came to the board meeting tonight, it wasn't all these people waiting to come to the school board meeting. They were in the basketball game. The boys were playing Hinsdale, and they were doing well, at least the last time I had seen. And then the girls were over at Hinsdale playing there, and they were up in the third quarter at that point in time as well. And since the last time we met, we haven't had a lot of school or anything, so there aren't as many things to report, apart from we had a conversation last time about during the public hearing about parking lots. And so tomorrow at 9:30, we have some individuals, we don't know how many companies will be coming, but we'll be going to do a walkthrough so that they can get an idea of what our parking lot needs are.
Any questions for the superintendent? Comments? Okay. Alrighty, then we're on to the consent agenda. Entertain a motion.
I'm going to accept the consent agenda.
All right, thank you, Charlie. Second? I'll second. Thank you, Laurel. And we're all in the same room, so we don't need to do roll call. So all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstain, and carries 600. Thanks. Okay. So we're on now to our discussion. The district-wide COVID-related needs. I know that there had been some conversation, both in the setting up of our plan and then also ongoing around trying to manage cleaning and supervision in the hallways, those being in two places at once. That's part of it, but there may be other needs. And I know, Ruben, I think you had some conversation with admin. So
Yeah, so I think that in listening to some public comment last time and the concerns that were around there, I had some conversations with the administration here at this building right here, who had already been kind of making some plans, but the needs for instance, for support within hallways, for bathrooms and things of that nature, the idea of having extra support is certainly would certainly be great. It does matter that the people who are giving that extra support have the ability and the skill set to kind of be directive and appropriate at the exact same time. And not sometimes, for instance, not all substitutes have that skill set. They go in because they want to be in the classroom and function underneath someone else's guidance that has they've provided plans and so forth. So what we've done so far is we started to fill out what we call green sheets, individuals who are already in the system, who for a temporary period of time, called temporary employees, we can get for either 4 hours a day, if that's what their schedule permits, or 6 hours a day, that's what their schedule permits, to be able to start to provide more support within the hallway settings to address some of the concerns that were brought up last time. So that's a start. The paperwork's should be on my desk at this point in time, if not today, then tomorrow. So, and then, as for, I think in the same vein with what needs there are, again, I echoed, today from what I said last time, that we've spent our time largely in that strained capacity. Not all of it's, actually much of it isn't COVID related. There are other reasons why people are out, that we would have those reasons every single year, certainly compounded by the current situation. And so with all of that happening, considering through this discussion, maybe going more than a long-term sub in every single school, maybe getting another one for this second semester might be of benefit. That way, if there's a need within a class, we can fill that, but also those people can then filter in other areas as directed by the administration if the classroom is not needed.
I have a question about that. So if someone is, say, at Ringe Memorial School, and they're not needed in, to cover a classroom because the teacher's out, so they're not needed as a sub, but their capacity. If, say, someone at the high school needs, the high school needs more capacity, can that person can they go from school to school, or are they just for that school?
Are you talking about an employee who? Are you talking about a long-term sub?
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, we hire the long-term subs by building.
Okay.
And so I think that we could make it so that there could be more flexibility that way. The realities are, Ringe needs someone all the time anyway, and something similar within Jaffrey and this school too.
Right.
Okay. That's been true for the past few years, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, difficulty finding subs over the last few years, yes.
Needing substitutes
Mhm.
every day, every building, multiple subs.
We've actually had quite a few substitutes this year. Actually, we've had a steadier stream of substitutes this year than we have in the past when you consider the district. But that's why I think we've been able to stay in that strained space and not that critical space.
John?
Ruben, you mentioned that the not all the subs would have the skills that you want to have people in the halls directing students, in an appropriate way. I think you mentioned that.
In a directive way.
Okay. Yeah, because I would think you'd have to be directed, but also, have skills on how to do that without being unnecessarily, I don't know, aggressive or
Sure.
whatever. Would long-term subs, be more likely to fill those kind of skills?
Well, I think if you get long-term substitutes, you want to utilize them any way you possibly can. And certainly the first place you'd want to have it would be in the classroom. People who are long-term tend to build relationships over a period of time and sort of the more consistent people within a classroom. Sometimes teachers have someone who, like, if they're out, this person, I want that person in the classroom because they understand how I do things and so forth. So it's beneficial to have familiarity in that way. It's for the same reasons. It's beneficial to have familiarity in the hallways as well, especially when you're talking about making certain that the bathrooms have the right numbers and so forth, or addressing masks if that is an issue that needs to be addressed. So I think that the long-term substitute provides the more flexibility. And then also specifically for the purpose of support in the non-classroom setting, in other areas, the common areas, I guess you would call it. Right now, we're trying to find people who are already in the system because you won't have to go through 2 weeks of hiring, for instance, in the process it takes to get them all loaded into the system. We're able to make a green sheet for a period of time, like a 2-month period of time or a 3-month period of time, as long as it's a temporary employee, and move forward that way and give them a very specific role to do. So having flexibility both ways, I think there's a flexibility in one way for the second scenario that I talked about. And then of course, like you said, the long-term sub, that's your biggest flexibility of how the person's used.
If I could follow up, does it make sense at this point on a temporary basis to bump up the salary of those long-term subs to make the position more attractive while we're waiting for the vaccine roll?
Well, the long-term subs already
Make more
get
than
paid quite a bit more automatically than a substitute, a typical day-to-day substitute work.
And its eligibility for benefits.
After a period of time, yes, I think it's like 18 straight weeks or so, they're benefit eligible. That's right. It's over double what I think, or at least around double what it is to be if you're a long-term. I think we pay around $12.50 or so for per hour for substitutes. I think around that $24.50, $25 for long-term subs.
That's pretty good. Okay. Patty, I saw you had your hand up.
Well, I was going to say that I would think that to that point, long-term subs would have a different pay scale, the substitutes have a different pay scale, and the hall monitors would have a different pay scale. I mean, it's a skill set or applied abilities would be varied they're just not one size fits all.
Yeah, I mean, like the temporary employee approach is more through the SAU, and so it does have there's a set rate. I think it can be found online how that works. But again, it's if you're it's only for it's the one that gives you most flexibility, but it also is for a limited amount of time. Like you can't just stay with someone and say that they're not an employee per se, a long period of time. You can only do it in smaller chunks.
Are you talking about months?
Months will be fine. You might, you go, sometimes what you can do is you can go for a couple months, say, let's see how things go, and then if you need it extended one more time, if your needs change, you can change kind of that role as well. But definitely, it's not something you continue on and on and on and on and on.
Yeah, that would be a lawsuit.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there other comments or questions?
Yeah, this is Heidi speaking. Ruben, are you suggesting then that for each school building, adding one additional long-term sub at this point?
I'm suggesting, and we've talked about this a little bit before, as a possibility. We were able to get the one for each.
Yep.
We also have had, long-term subs that we've hired simply because we've had other reasons for people to need to be out for long-term subs. So that's like a normal year, for instance. So I would think that as we go through, and when our major issue is strained staffing, and concerns of perhaps the common spaces where kids are at and so forth within the school, making sure that we're all abiding by the safest practices, a combination of the two. Continue to allow the administration to go forward with getting some people that they need for, hallways, bathrooms, things like that. And then it takes a little bit longer, but looking for some longer term subs. The semester just ended for college, so there might be some people who are certified who would want to do that. We have been able to use some of our student teachers in the elementary schools. They've come on board as long-term subs. So that's been very helpful, and they know our learners. And so that's been very smooth, actually.
Nice.
And we've had a dedicated person or two at the high school as well. That's a little bit of a different pool. So, when it comes down to supports like that, I think people is what you're talking about. We do our nursing situations working out well. We do have the extra nurse. That person's come in helpful. We've had times when we needed to have coverage. That person, when there is not a need for extra coverage, is able to help get caught up on a lot of paperwork and so forth that they've had for a while as we transition to some new software that's more secure.
Any other? I guess I know that you had met with administrators. I didn't know if they had cited any other issues or anything that they had concerns over, or they?
No, both elementary schools really ran very well today. I think there were a couple of situations where both principals had to cover some classes at times, not the entire day, but periods. So again, that's a staffing issue, but the kids wear their masks, they do their ass, and so they do a nice job. And then the secondary, I walked around the school quite a bit. The kids were doing what they were supposed to be doing. There were a couple of situations where I gave them a nod to put the mask over that nose. Yeah. So, and I've done that at the athletic events as well, and continue to push forward with that. So it was good to see the tonight at the basketball game, the referees calling the kids out on it. So that's good. obviously you're running up and down, you know, can change, but you gotta keep that up.
Yeah, I guess I would say it's understandable that that's what happen when you're running, but I would certainly hope that it's an accident and not, you know, a practice and then people are, you know, waiting to be told to put their mask back on. They should be getting into the habit of recognizing, you know, granted it's in the moment, I'm sure it's very difficult, but I think that I would like to be confident that it's being enforced at the highest level.
All right, well, thanks very much, and it's good to hear the plan to address some of the concerns. All right, so we're on to the board committee, wellness.
Wellness. So I have, again, this is Heidi speaking. I'm not in the camera for those who are listening. So an exciting update for wellness. We've been working on planning a new activity, which I think I've mentioned before, but it's getting some more traction. So Heather has worked really hard, and other members of the committee, to get permission from both Conservation Commission and both Stafford and Ridge to be able to place placards on trails that will have QR codes that will link to PDFs, and those PDFs our plan is that they will change over time. There'll be some trail information, trail etiquette, and then it really just, you know, the sky's the limit as far as the types of activities we have in mind to do with the other placards along the way on these trails. So one idea is to use them to have information about nature, or perhaps to use them to set up a scavenger hunt along the way. They can be used as storytelling prompts along the way. They can be used as physical fitness stations as people move along the trails, with the idea being that they change regularly to be an incentive for people to continue to get out and see what new fun things there are to do on the trails. So, you know, so we've got permission to do that, which is wonderful. And we also have some students who are interested in the possibility of perhaps a new club being created to help with this effort. And so it's getting there. It's not quite, you know, come to fruition yet, but we're getting there. So that's an exciting piece. The other piece is, and I think I've touched on this before, but the wellness policy is this very big policy. It's currently for us a 2-page policy with an additional 4 pages of protocols. And there's a lot of, every 3 years we're supposed to be audited by the state. And so you are, the wellness committee is supposed to be tracking and making sure that we're, you know, meeting all of the requirements that are linked to the USDA because of our breakfast and lunch program. So we've been going through that, and it's a pretty heavy process, but we're making some good strides in terms of getting our policy better aligned to both the NHSBA and their model policy, and also the model policy from the USDA. So that the next time, we're actually supposed to be audited this year, but we're not sure whether it's going to happen. And our policy is strong. There's definitely some good pieces that we need to have, but we need to add some things in and change our practices to meet that. We also are doing some things that, you know, we're supposed to be doing, but they're just not in our policy. So we need to spell that out that we're doing them, such as making sure that we provide water free of charge in our schools. So, so we're working on that, and we're going to, I know I had asked about this, I think last year, possibly the year before, about those being 2 separate documents, but for the purpose of assessing this policy on a regular basis, it makes more sense to follow what the NHSBA has and the model policy from the federal government, and to make it one piece again. So it's going to be very long. I mean, obviously that will come before the board, but that's going to be our recommendation to kind of put those 2 pieces together. So more work is happening on that this week, and hopefully we'll be able to, you know, get something finalized soon so that can first be shared with the policy committee and then brought to the board. So lots happening. We're meeting next on February 1st. And as always, we're one of the things we're supposed to do is be making sure that we have a very robust group of people representing all different stakeholder groups. So we're always looking for new members to join the committee. We have a really wonderful parent on the committee who's been, just really into everything and really helpful. So that's been great. But, we're always looking for more members to join. So we'll let you know when we get those trail markers out there, and we're all excited about it because there's so many different ways to take this project and so many cool ways to involve kids at every grade level. So, great. All right.
Any questions or comments for Heidi?
I have a couple questions. One question is, who's on the committee now?
Who's on the committee? So Heather Lindstad is our chair, Ann Wheeler, and hold on, I can tell you everybody. Taylor Ratcliffe is the parent. I'm on it. Obviously, don't want to forget people. Hold on a second. And Leanne Colleen, who is in our business office. Let me see. I'll come if you want to go on to something.
Okay. The next question was, this harks back to an update, I think 2 updates ago. One thing that I was really excited about in our policy was that we said that we were going to have a way to track the physical activity of our students.
Yeah.
And could you give us an update on where we stand with that?
What was the last thing you said, Laura?
Could you provide an update on where the district stands with that?
Yeah, so, sorry, just let me tell you quickly, Kelly Marcotte and John Vieser from our food service, and the 2 people I forgot, and I said Ann, and I know you're on, so I didn't forget you. Okay, so that policy is MIAH, and so, it has fallen under what we've been looking at. We've purchased a bunch of polar heart rate monitors, and the intention had been to start tracking fitness starting with the 6th grade. And I think that was happening with really good, strong intentions, and then COVID happened, and there was so much going on. So in our committee, we've discussed that that is something that we will push to have happen starting next year. So that still needs to take place. And what we've discovered in looking at the policies is that IMAH is really, it is verbatim also within the actual wellness policy. So if there's a category for physical activity and physical education, and so the language in that separate policy is embedded in the wellness policy. So I would tell you that nothing is happening right now to do that, but there is the intention to get that rolling. And Ruben, I don't know if you can speak more to that. We had talked about when the 2 new health and wellness and physical education teachers were hired at the middle school levels, that would be something we would bring them into helping set up. So it has not come, it hasn't come to
Yeah, I don't
fruition
have
yet,
anything to add at this point in time, other than the fact that I know that's still in the planning stages, and also that along with just personalized learning plans in general being kind of a ticket going forward.
Yeah.
I think there were some devices that were purchased for
we
heart rate monitors and so forth.
Right, and I mean,
But it's not a systemic issue. It's not. We have not systematized.
the intention was that it would start, but there's also the issue of those being a hygiene issue, and I think it was just overwhelming to start the year with being concerned about how that there's enough for a class set, but they have to be cleaned, and so yeah, I think we will be working on that, but it's just not been able to be
filled this year.
Yes, not this year.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Heidi? All right, thanks. Next up, facilities.
The committee has not met since our last board meeting, but I will offer a couple things. One is, on my way in this evening, I noticed the lighting in the gravel parking lot area and off the eve of the new garage seems to do an okay job getting that area lit.
Good.
If there are some issues in, I'll say, the lower gravel lot, the one that was not worked on this year, it looks like there might be an opportunity to do some angling with the lighthead, but it really looks pretty terrific. And have there been any, how long's it been on?
How long has the
Have the lights
lights been on?
Because I don't remember seeing them the last time I was here.
A couple weeks, I thought.
I can't tell you.
I'm trying to think when the electrician was here.
I haven't
So
been here.
I think it's
in
been a couple
the
weeks.
dark.
Okay. I just wondering if you had any neighbor issues.
I have not heard of any.
Okay, and then the second thing I would like to talk about is having a routine update to the board on the progress of our architect. And so I'd like to suggest that maybe the first meeting embedded in the superintendent's report or somehow providing a progress report on the architect's work. And just have it regularly scheduled because in the facilities committee, we are having some trouble getting that information and I don't want us to lose sight of the work that we want the architect to do because it will be next midsummer before we know it, and it will be time to be putting work out to bid and et cetera. So in time for the next budget cycle.
Who is the architect requested?
Well, so Leslie is the main communication person.
Leslie is, I believe Leslie's role is to coordinate should the architect need to meet with various people. But I think I'm not sure exactly who is the architect's boss.
So I'm just sending myself an email. Update on architect at the first of each month. The architect is Turner. The Turner group is the architect. Both Leslie and John have been in contact with them this week, or this past week.
Who is managing the contract?
Leslie's dealing with all of the communication and trying to keep them on the timeline. John is the one who's talking in the nitty-gritties of what's going on.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Who's the one that is, the buck stops here person? Who's in charge of the contract?
Well, John and Carrie work on the contract side of things. So, I mean, we the three of us work together.
Because I believe that you're going to get to the point pretty soon where you need to have some sort of a small committee. An administrator from each building, given the bathroom scope. And then other stakeholders for the facade work at this campus, and ideally a student or two if possible. Right? That would be great.
Right. Any comments or questions for Laurel on those? John?
Yes, Laurel, I feel like they're asking some good questions, but I know it's kind of a shared responsibility at this point, which is hard.
It does make it difficult for the architect to have it be shared. I will say that.
Yeah, so I mean, it almost sounds like ideally it would be Ruben, except that Ruben has so many other
Right.
responsibilities that.
Well, I can contact to your point, I can contact the architect and ask them what would be the most efficient approach to making sure that we're moving forward. Or, you know, like I said, John has been in continuous contact with them and just talking about them today. Maybe he has a good relationship with Bill, I think.
Yes, Bill.
And Bill seems to be the one that is responsive.
He's our project manager.
Yeah.
He should be responsible.
Yeah, so I mean, organizationally, I don't know if John is the ideal person, but in terms of practical purposes, he might be the ideal person. You know, I don't know what you think.
No, I think if we have too many people, you know,
If,
to me, it seemed like a separation of duties and would work out well. But if it doesn't seem to be working out that way, we can, you know, readjust.
well, if John is the go-to person with the understanding that he can lean on Leslie for any coordination
Mhm.
of people, you know, people and times, that might work out. But,
This is Patty. It sounds as though the facilities committee agenda should have a template that has that as
It
a
does.
report. So it does. So,
Yeah.
but you just haven't met since we met last.
but also we have not been able to get the information, which is why I wanted to make it part of the superintendent's report. Once a month.
All right. Public comments?
Yeah, so again, same process as always for public comments. Feel free to raise your hand. We can address you. First, last name, and town of residence, please.
And while we're waiting for someone, just want to remind people about the delegate assembly. There's information here, but that's coming up this week, right? Saturday? So,
Also, next week, 6 o'clock, Monday, Education Committee.
yes.
I believe we posted that agenda,
It'll be posted.
or as close. I think we were working on it.
Yeah, it's finalized. It'll be posted
So,
tomorrow.
but two major items are middle school, high school, admin presenting a little bit further as to what they presented before, maybe in some more specifics around STEM, and maybe some other offerings.
Will that be via Zoom?
It will definitely be. Yep.
And it's at 6 o'clock?
6, yep. And then David Frazier is going to work some student services in the district, focusing on inclusionary practices. He's going to be reporting out on the district work on MTSS, which is multi-tiered systems of support, and kind of probably just giving a small presentation on what that is and what's happened so far, and will likely be asking for a board member to be part of a district-wide MTSS team. I recommend hearing what it's all about prior to doing any sort of volunteer. So, I think you'll find it interesting.
Okay. And I guess just a reminder, for those that aren't on the education committee, you can be there as a community member. Right. Okay. Any other board matters?
Yeah, the question
Oh, yeah.
is for deliberative, presenting the articles.
Yes.
Is the superintendent going to do all of them, or is the board not, is the board going to do some of them, or is the boards are going to meet on the Monday before? And if the board members need to prepare a presentation, I think we should decide that.
Yes. Last year, we each, or not each, but the board members did the presenting, I think, for the most part.
Except for the operating budget.
Yes,
Superintendent,
right. But I remember you and I worked on one. So I personally think it's better if we have different voices. So, and I suggest to go along with this too, I sent an email out today. I will compile the letter, but I'm looking for committee members to write the paragraph about the board committees. So if you could send me an email saying that you're willing to do that. I heard from a couple people, but I need all the committees. So yes, I think, is there anyone who, there's what, 4 articles? Oh, 3 articles. The first one is about the board members. The second one is the budget. The third one, fourth, and fifth are the ones that need presenting. 3, 4, 5, right?
I would nominate Charlie to present the one about retention of funds.
The 5%.
Yep.
Aren't you glad you raised your
I
hand?
would nominate Laurel to ask people for an extra $500,000.
Charlie, I think you could explain it in a way that would be convincing and understandable to some of the people who would be most
Exactly.
concerned.
Exactly, Mike.
And then we just need one more.
Open mouth, right?
Wow.
Well, it could be my swan song, that'd be fine.
I was gonna say, you can always, compare up. There's enough of us. We're talking
And then
about
there's-
3 warrant articles. There's 7 of us.
There's a $25,000
Special ed.
special ed one. That one's up for grabs.
Yeah. Are we doing this? We're all doing it.
Everybody should take
Wait,
that
what's
one.
the other one? There's the
Half a million.
5%, the special ed, what's the?
The
The parking lots.
500
for
to do the
infrastructure.
parking.
Oh, okay.
Where we just increased.
Yes, okay.
So, yeah, it's the 25 special ed one that we just really need someone for. So you can feel free to email me. If I don't hear from you by tomorrow morning, I'll email one of you.
What do you say, Patty? You want to do that one?
I mean, I have never done one, so I have to do it.
You
So
can do
why
that.
don't, Patty, pick someone to work with you on it.
Laurel, you're going to do the parking lot one?
Carol, do it. Unless you want to.
No. But you can do it.
All right. So we got 3 people. Awesome. We're also meeting tomorrow to
Yeah, with a
plan
small group of people.
the protocols. Yeah. Okay.
I was gonna ask how planning is going. Do you need any help?
All right.
Yeah, so it's myself, Charlie, Laurel, Ruben, Bob Chauvin, our district moderator, John LeClaire, facilities manager, and Samantha Lewis, our district clerk. We're meeting tomorrow at 3 o'clock to talk about some of the logistics of the in-person deliberative session, and then, based on the conversation we have from there, we may have another one, but just to kind of see, what the best process will be to, have that meeting.
So you're all set, you don't,
Yeah, I
At
think
this
we're-
right now, you don't need any.
At this point, yes.
Okay.
We're good at this point.
And the plan is to hold the meeting at the Range Memorial School?
Yes.
Yeah, we have the date, we have the time, we have the location. Now we just have to work on the, the logistics of how to hold it most efficiently and keeping protocols in mind and things like that.
Okay, any hands?
Nope.
Okay, great. Future items were graduation requirements, new courses, and technology. All right,
Technology audit was done. We got a brief overview of it. Leslie and I are meeting later on this week.
This afternoon.
Not this afternoon.
You've
Later
been
on
here too
this,
long.
yeah, later on this week to kind of go through that again. And then we'll be meeting with Mike and so forth for things. We had some really positive news that was given to us, and then some other things that we more or less knew we needed to work on. So in a nutshell, a lot of our infrastructure is in very, very good shape, perhaps better than many places. And then I don't think it would come as a shock that some of our policies and procedures are in not, either don't exist or they need to be updated or made very clear. So, which was some things that perhaps were a little bit below the average on that one.
Everyone's gonna be changing passwords going forward, aren't they?
That might be one of the things, yeah. So I think there's legitimate policies and the company will help us kind of direct them to us. But also just with everything else, and we've been working on for a lot of different areas, just writing down practices. And here are the practices. So things aren't done the same way
making it clear and
in every
consistent.
area. So it needs to be clear and consistent. That's right.
Great. Okay. Well, that's us done for tonight.
Move adjourned.
Thank you, Laurel. You want a second?
I'll second.
Okay. I guess for German, you don't really need that, but anyway. All right, we're done. Thank you very much.